Yo, Darious Britt here, and today we are reviewing the short film Removed Part 2. It's directed by Tony Cruz and Nathaniel Matanik, and it is the second part of the well-received dramatic short film Removed. It's about 23 minutes long. Short synopsis. Just as Zoe was making peace with her new life in the foster care system, she's hit with another blow. Yeah, she just can't catch a break. Before I get into it, I'll leave a link in the description section so you can go over there and throw some eyeballs at it. If you haven't seen it yet, come back and then we can chat about it, because, you know, that's just kind of what we do. We talk about stuff. Too late. Let's get into it. The title. Given that most people are probably going to be familiar with Removed if they watch this, then the whole, remember my story part of it could either be taken as super epic or super dramatic. I feel like it's about 50-50. Remember my story. Epic. Plot structures. So this short's kind of long-ish, and I feel like the rising action could be divided into two parts. The hook. We kick things off with conflict. We catch our protagonist at the tail end of some sort of fight or altercation. Then we get a brief recap of Removed Part 1. Setup. Zoe's biological mom fights in the court system to get her children back. We find Zoe coping with her new life in the foster care system with her brother Benaya. Things seem good with her foster mom as well. For now. Inciting incident. Benaya gets adopted by new parents, thereby splitting Zoe and her brother. Rising action. Zoe attempts to cope with the loss of her brother, but she's not taking it very well. She deals with the visits from her mom. Her anger builds and builds to a midpoint climax where things get violent. Zoe attacks her foster mom right in the middle of all the other students in the classroom and trashes her class. Ooh-wee! She's some kind of pissed. Rising action part 2. Zoe sees a psychiatrist about her anger issues and gets prescribed meds. More frustration. Zoe and her foster mom have a heart-to-heart talk about living in the storm. Zoe gets to visit her brother Benaya. Happiness. More court proceedings. Bio mom loses rights to both kids permanently. Climax/resolution. We jump into the future to find Zoe all grown up like. She's able to console a distraught student who's going through the foster care system because she's been there. I've been there. You ain't the onlyest one, believe that. One of the strongest things this film has going for it, just like the first part, is the conflict. There is a ton of it, both internal and external, and there's also an underlying tension throughout. So Zoe's a relatively powerless character. She's just a young girl stuck in the foster care system. She doesn't really have much ability to influence her circumstances or the things going on around her. She's just sort of along for the ride. Dramatically speaking, usually when you write a story that features a powerless character as a protagonist, they tend not to be as interesting to watch because they can't do anything. But even though Zoe can't really do anything to change her circumstances, she's still very interesting to watch because she's such a freaking fighter. I think that was how they were able to kind of get around the challenges that are inherent with writing a powerless character. She may not be able to change a situation, but she's gonna let you know exactly how she feels about it. I done told you I don't want no cheese on my hamburger. I said this in the last review and I'll say it again. Stellar job by Abby White, the actress that plays the little girl Zoe. The camera really loves her. She doesn't have to do much to sell anything. She just has a naturalism to her. They caught some really genuine moments between her and her little brother on the beach. I think most of that stuff was improv. The film is obviously narrated by Zoe. Again, some people will dig it, and then some won't. I personally didn't mind it, and yes, it is very stylized. Obviously, no normal girl her age would be saying the type of things that she's saying to herself.
A whirlwind, tornado, set out to destroy me.
The narrative voice is, way too mature for a little girl like this, but given the intended audience of the film, which is prospective foster care parents, it's appropriate. It's easier for them to connect with a voice that they already identify with. Production design. Talk about attention to detail. Look at this. Almost everything looks well used and lived in. They picked some really nice locations where they could get some depth in their shots. Most of their locations have nice big windows to let all that beautiful natural sunlight in. And also most of the locations have nicely painted walls, most of them consisting of blues and tans and grays. They really avoided those plain white naked walls. I can't tell you how much of a difference that makes. Zoe wears a ton of blue, 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 and so do most of the other characters. Pretty sure this was intentional as these colors blend with almost everything else in the film. The music is practically wall to wall. There's always something playing underneath. Some people will mind it, some people won't. One of my favorite pieces was in the courtroom scene with the bio mom. There's this percussive score underneath everything that really makes you feel uneasy.
Understand that this hearing is to terminate your parental rights. Do you understand that if the judge terminates them...
It's the same tactic thriller movies use. It's odd that you would find this used in a dramatic film, but I mean, it works and it's interesting. There was some interesting editing choices going down. There's a lot of cutting back and forth from one scene to another scene that happens later in time. It sort of gives the film this messy feel. I think it works for 3 reasons. 1, it compresses time. 2, it helps with pacing. 3, since the entire story is told through Zoe's perspective, then this kind of says something about her psychological state. She's a mess. Just like the first film, this was shot handheld. The good kind of handheld though, not the shaky just to be shaky kind. The film does feel a little claustrophobic, just like the first one, with a lot of tight shots and close-ups of faces. We also spend an insane amount of time in Zoe's face. Again. For most of the film, we're inside of her head, so, I mean, we should be in her face. Where else would we be? This is some first-person shit, man. I particularly liked how they handled the scenes with the glass business. Ah, geez, she picked up a piece of glass. Oh. They kind of hinted at the idea of cutting, but they didn't really go there. They went somewhere a little more interesting, which I liked. With the whole cutting business, sometimes I think it's too easy. It's too easy. Man, I suck so f***ing bad. How about them thirds? Looking good. So who's it for? Well, the film was made for the foster care community. It's an educational tool meant to be used to give prospective foster parents an idea of what they're getting into. Last time when I reviewed the first film, I got a lot of comments about the use of slow-mo, wall-to-wall music. Some people thought the polished look detracted from the realism of the film. Too many lens flares. It looks more like a music video, yada 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 yada. Here's the deal. This film isn't intended for the filmmaking community at large. It's intended for the foster care community, and a lot of the material that community is used to getting is very dry and boring. So if these relatively heavy subject mattered videos have an unusually music video glossy type feel to them, it's because they're trying to make these films more engaging to that community. So before anybody says, why is this material handled like a music video? That's why. Well, that's all I got for you. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like or subscribe. You can find me on the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, or the Twitter, baby. You can also check out my second YouTube channel, Darious Britt, where I vlog about my adventures on the film festival circuit, my first feature-length film, live casting, etc., etc. I do believe that's all I got for you. Deep it out, suckers. Booyah!